Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. We'll start in 2 minutes. So I saw a lot of participants are joining, so let's start in 2 minutes.
Or Shri, just let us know when we start.
Sure. Let's just wait for another minutes as a lot of people are joining right now.
Cool.
People, I think we can get started.
Cool. Let me quickly share my screen. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Just a quick intro. My name is Vipul, and I'm the Commerce Cloud AE for the Greater China region. And today I'll take you through a bit of numbers. I hope everyone loves numbers, and it's going to give you an idea around the state of commerce in the last year or so. What we did is we kind of collected two sets of data. Firstly, we reached out to almost 1,400 commerce leaders in as many as 40 plus countries. And then what we did is we kind of related it to the data that we had coming in from more than 1 billion shoppers on their preferences, their pattern of buying. And with that, we got a set of information that we are sharing today. The first topic that I would love to cover would be more around how the line between physical and digital is kind of fading, and it's all becoming kind of working in sync with each other. To understand what's happening, maybe we'll go a bit back and we'll touch upon last year in March, when the WHO declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic. Immediately right after that, what we saw in Q2 was as much as 72% increase in the digital sales. And then what we saw was that it was not something which was a split reaction or a split second reaction or something. It was something which was constant. In Q3, we saw again the 55% rise in the year-on-year sales or the digital sales. What we also did is we kind of categorized these respondents into three categories. There were sites which were treated as the high performers, and then there were digital channels which were the moderate performers and the underperformers. the idea was to understand what is it that the high performers are doing differently. And one thing that we could kind of understand immediately was that the high performers were the quick movers, and they were investing a lot in kind of bringing in new technology to provide the experience to the consumers, which was in line with what consumers were doing in a physical store. For example, they invested hugely and very quickly in the virtual events. They were doing a lot of virtual events, which were traditionally happening in a physical store. Then what they very quickly adopted was providing appointments, for example, for the stylist or an expert to so that consumers can understand a bit more about the product or whatnot. Similarly, what we also saw was that the consumers were kind of feeling that itch of not being in a physical store. So a lot of department stores, what they did is they became a bit more innovative and quickly invested on the virtual reality, wherein a consumer can go across an aisle, check different products, click on a product and check what it looks like and stuff like that. And lastly, there was a lot of activation around the virtual reality. And this virtual reality, obviously, the fashion and the cosmetics kind of were the overall first mover. But not just these industries. What we also saw was industries with industries such as automotive or jewelry were also investing hugely in the virtual reality. Be it checking a car in your garage or kind of selecting an engagement ring for your fiance or to-be wife. These were the areas where a lot of investment was made and very quickly. And that's the reason why these retailers were able to reap the benefit and were amongst the high performers in that category. Now coming to the physical stores, they were also responding to this changing dynamics, and they were responding in a slightly different manner. The physical stores were now becoming more of a pickup point or a fulfillment center, and things that we had never really heard of in the past. For example, curbside pickup or contactless payments were kind of things which were being adopted more and more. And these were the areas where the physical stores saw an immediate shift in the way they were doing business. The other point that I would love to touch upon today is how the direct-to-consumer initiative is shaping up, and what are the areas where we might have some numbers. So I think at COVID times, one thing that we all realized is there were certain industries which were kind of seeing a massive surge in the the direct-to-consumer business, and without any doubt, the food and beverage, the consumer goods, they were the fast mover. They were seeing the major traffic coming towards them for the direct-to-consumer. And the other industries such as medical devices or the advertising and marketing were also seeing a lot of growth in the area. The customer demand was also pretty high in certain specific categories like the media and communication. I think we all love Netflix and Amazon Prime. Similarly, consumer goods, I think there has been a major shift in that area. And gradually retail, healthcare, all these were the areas where customer demand was very high. The online grocery was the undisputed king in that area. They saw as much as 5% growth in the GMV or in the overall the percentage of GMV to the whole revenue. But what was more important was that this was almost 40% of the overall growth. And that is the sort of jump that the grocery sector has seen in the last 1 year or so. Now, what we also did is we wanted to understand how permanent is this shift. And what we realized is, first of all, grocery saw almost 200% increase in almost 1 year on how the business was done on the digital side. More importantly, customers, what they informed is almost 68% were very likely to continue making a purchase from a digital channel. And this is where the industry is now realizing that the shift is to stay, and it's going to be more of a permanent stay. The other point where we have seen is, again, those areas where the direct initiative has been there. The growth has been towards the ones which have kind of invested hugely on the direct-to-consumer initiative, with the priority being around having their own digital channel, having presence over social media, compared to investing more on the physical channels, which obviously is not something which many people are looking to do. The third and the last topic that I would love to cover, again, it kind of reflects on how we have done business. We live in a world where, in ASEAN, we have, countries who are depending on each other. Historically, we were able to get stuff quite easily from different countries. But as this pandemic, and as we are moving out of pandemic in many countries, and we are calling it the endemic, how important it is for us to be able to easily do our business cross-border. And for that cross-border, obviously, international expansion is must. And in this area where you can't do much of a travel, how can you quickly do so? And how Commerce Cloud can provide you some sort of benefit. Obviously, Commerce Cloud is not going to be enough. You obviously need someone like Lingual to support you do that, physically, and then Miracle to be able to, support you on the technical side. I'm going to do my bit, and I'm going to tell you a bit on how Commerce Cloud can do that, and then we'll pass it on to the others to give you some benefit. Many a times when it comes to the cross-border or the international expansion, consumers or customers, they ask a question wherein, what are the things that we should always look for in a solution? One important thing that everyone should keep in mind is the architecture on which a solution works. I think it's very important to pick a solution which is multi-site architecture. Benefits being you can manage it easily from the IT standpoint, and run multiple sites on a single platform, so that our business can run locally and IT can manage it from a regional hub or something. Then the other important point is it should be quickly localized, because again, every country has a different need, be it the language, be it the currency, be it the payment options that they prefer, be it the delivery partners that they prefer. All those localizations could be done, and could be done easily in that solution that you choose. And then the other very important aspect is to reap the benefit of those global experts. We have Alejandro from Lingual who's going to talk about that as an expert. Why, what are the benefits that you get from them? And when you're operating in this model, you can easily rely on them, work with them, collaborate with them. That is the sort of advantage that you get from Commerce Cloud. The other sort of prospects which are more from the brand side, the brand owners, wherein they have multiple brands. For them, the challenges have been more around, how do I manage multiple sites? How do I manage my content or the digital assets seamlessly across various sites, across various countries, and then stuff like that. And then these are the areas where Commerce Cloud kind of, traditionally has been managing these challenges. And it's not just because, COVID happened and, that international expansion or the cross-border has been something which is required. It has always been there. And historically, we have been helping customers to, launch international sites. And that is the benefit that kind of, comes out of the box. I just told you that, we have been helping those customers. So why not pick two names? I think Lululemon, which operates around 8 international sites. They use, B2C commerce. They do a lot of localization around the payments, the payment partners that they provide. And then these sites are hyper localized for each country where they operate. The other interesting example is around Shiseido, wherein they have almost 60 plus sites, touching 70 plus now, in as many as 28, 30 countries. And each of these sites are, again, hyper localized. The digital assets are managed seamlessly from a single point of view. Small IT teams are managing at a regional level. But the major IT team sits at the HQ, which manages the overall architecture or realm for the Shiseido sites. With that being said, I think today we have Alejandro from Linkbuild, who's doing something as amazing as these brands. And more importantly, being an expert from the industry, I'm sure he has a lot to share on how you can be successful, in operating the digital, the cross-border commerce. Alejandro, over to you.
Great, thank you, Vipul. Let me share my screen quickly and I'll get started. You can see my screen, right? Just making sure. Perfect. So yeah, thank you, Vipul, for the introduction. My name is Alejandro Vargas. I'm co-founder and COO currently at Linkbuild. And as Vipul was sort of mentioning before, e-commerce, especially when it comes to cross-border, is not really only about the technology piece, which is obviously a very important piece, but it's also about all the other ancillary services that go along with running smooth e-commerce across borders or globally. And that's really where we come into play. And we have partnered with Salesforce on the technology side and also with Merkle to help, assist us on the technology side as well. But we are handling a lot of the other things that also come along with e-commerce. The top areas of concern in cross-border e-commerce for companies are these. And as you can tell, the top ones are very much on the operational front. So you have things that typically companies are thinking about, logistics and delivery. We get a lot of questions about that. We have a lot of the compliance with regulations and laws that are evolving. At the same time, that I think goes hand in hand with one that you see a little bit lower, which is data protection. But that's also a matter for technical security, which is something that the right technology will help you do. And you have also the cross-border payment side, which again is and the multi-currency aspect, which is also kind of a blend of technology and also operations at the same time. So that's why the importance of operations cannot be really understated, because a lot of what you will be doing when you are shifting or going cross borders with your e-commerce, it really will be on multiple areas that need to be functioning properly together. So this particular picture shows a little bit of all of those pieces that anybody that's actually going and engaging in cross-border e-commerce will have to manage. You have not only the shop itself and the e-commerce environment or the different channels that you're using, you have the marketing piece that it's now having to cover multiple countries. You have the payment methods. the pickups, the shipping, and you also have the customer support aspect of it, which now needs to like evolve to be multilingual in order to actually properly serve your customers. So there's a lot of things that go on in global e-commerce, and what we try to do at Lingual is that we try to essentially simplify that for companies where we are really handling all of that stuff behind the scenes, and companies are not really worrying about that stuff, because a lot of that stuff really falls outside of the areas of expertise of companies. Essentially, you can think of e-commerce as an almost unique industry that many brands, for example, should not really be deviating resources into, and they should really be focusing on their core competencies instead of worrying about all these other things that are moving at the same time. There are bigger companies that can handle a lot of those things on their own, but even the medium to large ones, I would say, have still a very hard time orchestrating all the pieces in e-commerce well. So with us, the first thing is really the global e-commerce capabilities from a technical standpoint, and that's where we partner with Salesforce and with Merkle for really our full service solution on Commerce Cloud. That you get the full benefit of. At the same time, you're getting like great customer care. That's one of the areas where we absolutely excel in providing customer care worldwide. And then we also provide you with marketing assistance, is marketing management services, where we're really consulting with you and your team to make sure that you're doing the right things, or having you partner with the right agencies to push marketing in different places. And then you have like all of the operations side, the shipping side, logistics side that we help you with, and all of that together really kind of leads to an increase in your online revenue generally. I'm going to touch very quickly on this slide. I'm not going to go through all of the wording. I think you'll have the benefit of these slides later. So, but I want to go through some data that's at the bottom that is important and it's kind of interesting. And these are the things why being in with the right partner will actually help you. And the first one is in relation to localization when it comes to language. 75% of customers actually prefer not to make a purchase in a site that is not in their native languages. I know that people assume sometimes that just having English is all that's needed, but really there's a lot of countries that prefer operating in their own native language for shopping. Also, 44% of customers say that like having live chat is really important. And in fact, there's live chat, there's data showing that there's a 48% increase in revenue per chat hour when you have a live chat on compared to when it's not on. You also, like on the payment method side, as long as you have approximately the 3 top payment methods of each country that you operate in, you're going to see sales that go up about 71%. Of course, that's a little bit high of a number. You have to think that in many countries, the top 3 payment methods are still your normal credit cards. So you're still covered in many countries with those. But in other countries, if you're really kind of going global, you really have to have other payment methods that are important to reach that full sales boost. And it's also very important to not assume that people are comfortable just buying in US dollars, for example, right? Which is like the currency of the world. That's not actually true. There's a lot of people out there that prefer buying in their local currency. And the last thing is about delivery. Delivery cannot be understated. I think it's very important right now, and that's why we're seeing a lot of changes in the last mile delivery as well, to try to increase the speed at which customers are receiving their products. It's very important for you to have fast delivery, because otherwise really the trust in the brand decreases, and there's many actually that don't come back if they don't have transparency in terms of the fulfillment and shipping process. So that like if you fix some of these things, your conversion rates will go up, your revenue online will go up, and that's what we really help you do in partnership with technology companies like Salesforce and Merkle. And we are a technology company too, but for a full service solution, we've chosen Salesforce to go with, and we'll talk a little bit about that later and why we chose to go with Salesforce and a Salesforce partner like Merkle to do this together. So with that said, I do want to pass this on to Patrick, who's going to talk a little bit about what they do as a Salesforce partner and how they've also helped us with our own setup on Salesforce Commerce Cloud. So Patrick, all you.
Thank you, Alejandro. Great numbers there. And let me connect on this right away. Again, thanks everyone for joining and good morning. Also from my side, my name is Patrick. I'm Managing Director of Merkle Commerce in APAC, also based here in Hong Kong. Just a very quick primer. If you're not familiar with Merkle, and I think the chance for this is quite high because you know, we're just making our brand really known here also in APAC. But you might know Dentsu. We're actually part of the larger Dentsu organization. But what we focus on is really specifically what we call CXM, Customer Experience Management. And what that includes for us is really three broad areas. It includes CX consulting, where we look at really, you know, the overall customer experience transformation, technology consulting, program strategy together with our clients. Then digital transformation, which is everything around obviously commerce, and we're going to speak much more about that as well. But it's also very closely connected and related to everything around customer data, CM, loyalty, digital experience, media services, etc. And then also data transformation, which is everything around really data management, cloud solutions, data science, AI, etc. So all this really coming together to form, you know, customer experience management. We have a very, you know, I would say strong roster of clients, really very impressive, I would say, across, you know, a lot of verticals. You know, we work a lot with fashion companies and brands. We work a lot with, you know, electronics companies, with manufacturers, etc. So you see just some of the names here in the bottom. And I also want to point out that we're really big as a partner with Salesforce as well. We've been working with Salesforce for many years, and you know, have grown to be now the #1 agency partner globally as well for Salesforce, and among, you know, the top 10 biggest partners for Salesforce as well. So working with Salesforce as well, obviously, you know, for an on-commerce cloud, but really covering, you know, the whole ecosystem as well. And as you've seen from Beeple as well, and you probably know from Salesforce, it's really an impressive range of solutions that all tie in and come together along the whole consumer journey, right? From commerce to marketing automation to service, customer data, etc. So I want to dive in the next few minutes a little bit into our really working relationship with Lingble and with Salesforce. What are we doing? What's our role here in the project? Generally speaking, we as Merkle support the implementation and rollout of new brand commerce sites based on Salesforce Commerce Cloud for Lingble. And just to give you a little bit of a high-level reference, you know, in terms of the timeline, I think that's quite interesting for you as well. And also to see really, you know, how quick things can go overall. So we've put some dates here just for your reference as well, high-level dates, just to give you a high-level idea how typically, you know, such a project shapes up. We started to really get engaged and started conversations about 1.5 years ago. This is when we had kind of the initial conversations around the ideas that Lingble had in terms of their roadmap, where they wanted to get at, you know, the high-level requirements. And then we started to take a little bit more time, especially here, what you see May to August, you know, to really kind of, you know, click in all the, you know, define project requirements, to define very clearly the project plan, to set up, you know, a very clear kickoff as well with all the related stakeholders, something which is also very relevant because obviously, you know, we are all involved here as Lingble, as Salesforce, as us, but there are typically other stakeholders as well from other, you know, third-party systems. Alejandro mentioned already, you know, payment and others, right? So making sure everyone is brought together and, you know, really brought up to the level, and then really defining the specifications very clearly around, you know, the requirements, the BIDs and everything around that. And then you can see, you know, then we really, you know, we kicked off in earnest and we went into development, you know, in a semi-agile environment as well, really making sure, you know, we had, you know, good progress as well. And, you know, that's progress that can be verified as well along the way, right? So it's not just, you know, one black box and at the end there's something that comes out, but really, you know, in a very, you know, agile manner as well. going through a development, with UAT processes, with SIT processes in between, right? If you're not familiar with the terms, user acceptance testing, system integrations testing, right? So just making sure everything works well together and everything works well from a user point of view to the project handover. And if you look at, the high level timelines here, and I think, that also shows that, even though these projects, sometimes, can get quite, extensive, and certainly, there were quite a few requirements as well that were very relevant for the Lingual team. At the end, if you look at it really from start to finish, it was just a little bit more than 3 months, right, that we spent here to really implement, a very extensive site and lay the foundation here really, for all subsequent sites as well that will roll out, right? Because then if you look at beyond that, so obviously we went into a maintenance model as well to make sure, we have, the existing sites, existing platform fully covered as well with SLAs. But then we went directly, and while we were still working on the first site, we already talked about the requirements, defining the requirements and everything for all the, subsequent sites that are going to be rolled out. And this is what we did immediately after the first site was launched, right? We really went into, a mode where, one by one, and actually in batches as well, we rolled out new brands and new sites. And you can see here as well, again, from the timeline, another 3 months to roll out another 4 brands. So really in quick succession, again, which very much speaks to what Vipo also mentioned in the beginning, right? Salesforce Commerce Cloud as the ideal platform as well to roll out new commerce sites very quickly for new brands, for new markets, right? And this is something that we're constantly continuing to work on with the Lingual team together as well, while covering, all the existing sites as well in terms of maintenance and SLA support. So what is the value that we brought into really this collaboration with Lingual, us as Merkle? First of all, obviously, especially when we started to engage, what we brought to the table is the really extensive expertise with Salesforce Commerce Cloud. At the time we got engaged, we started the conversation, as you saw from the timeline, about 1.5 years ago. We've had already dozens of successful launches on Salesforce Commerce Cloud under our belt. In fact, the 2 customers as well that Vipo showed, Shiseido and Lululemon, are customers of ours as well, right? So we've launched dozens of Salesforce Commerce Cloud sites already. So we had already that expertise to know how to build sites from scratch. We were able to bring our experience and our expertise to the table and really help to speed up the implementation, especially when we started, right? And that also related very much to us, reducing the risk on the project. Obviously, if there's a new team that gets enabled and starts on a new platform, and here again, our team working hand in hand as well with the Lingual team, we've also made sure that we share our knowledge, that there was a lot of, really working together and making sure that we also, again, bring in our best practices and our knowledge in terms of coding standards and best practices to reduce any risk of the project. And lastly, I think equally as important as well, to bring in our very proven project methodology, because at the end, planning is everything, right? You ask any project manager, they will tell you planning is everything, to make sure we stick to the plan, and obviously also to fulfill, the expectation of all the business partners, because Lingual obviously is also, has certain commitments to the business partners, to the brands, and to make sure we all comply with this, right? And as you saw, overall, we're perfectly in time as well, and all this is also a function of proper planning in advance. So our involvement, just to outline this very broadly for you, obviously we've worked with the Lingual team and with Salesforce on initializing the initial Salesforce Commerce Cloud, setting up all the initial environments, all the initial functionalities, and all the common features as well. And this is really relevant because one term that you will see quite often in the Salesforce concept as well is the concept of a reference application, which is really meant to be the underlying layer on which everything else is built. So the huge advantage that you have with this is obviously there's one system that is built and that can fulfill basically all the common requirements that you would have across, as a business, across different brands, across different countries. And all these functionalities can be activated for every new subsequent rollout, right? So what that means, of course, if we have a new rollout for a new brand, for a new market, we never need to start from scratch. We always have this existing layer of a reference application, which already fulfills, 80+% of all the core requirements. So everything that comes on top of this in terms of rolling out new sites, etc., is really just building on top of the existing reference application. Again, just speaks to the power as well of Salesforce Commerce Cloud rolling out very quickly to new geographies. And then, part of the whole process as well to, bringing the brands, a lot of different brands onto Salesforce Commerce Cloud is also making sure we migrate all the legacy data and everything, from the legacy platforms to Salesforce Commerce Cloud. We implement Salesforce Commerce Cloud as well very extensively with the Lingual team, together with very extensive fraud protection systems and payment gateways. Alejandro also spoke to that, really also in a very extensive manner to make sure as well, that all payments are verified and they're positively verified. Also very relevant, obviously, for business. And then also integrate extensively with the internal ecosystem for ERP, with the ERP, for example, making sure inventory data, product data, price data is all automatically updated, right? And everything flows seamlessly into an omni-channel order management as well, right? For pick, pack, and ship, for delivery, and also everything after that, if there are any returns, etc. Right? And then we couple this as well. And again, here is also a strength of Salesforce with AI and personalization components. If we look at, chatbot functionality, again, Alejandro spoke to the power of chatbots here really as well, right? As a customer acquisition and a customer support and service tool, and then leveraging as well on the very powerful tools that Einstein brings in within Salesforce in terms of, creating personalized recommendations and getting to know customers better and predicting better, what customers will actually like. Something I also want to speak about this, and just to be, also very transparent. Obviously, if you look at a new collaboration and working together, something that will also invariably happen is also there's some challenges, right? And I think rather than just not talk about this, I think something that everyone should adhere to as well is to talk about it openly and always to learn from it, right? And something that we've learned along our path as well, together with the Lingual team, and I think Lingual also, the Lingual team also learned, with us. So there were some challenges during the process. I think overall, very smooth, but just to pick out two things, where we needed to make sure as well that we address them right away. There was, initially some misalignment, on the data mapping and integration process, which, for us reinforced again that we needed to make sure to set this, very clearly down as well. So there's no misalignment in terms of how this should look like in terms of data mapping. Of course, a very important part of a project as well. We need to make sure that data is reliably mapped from one system to the other, because you don't want any errors to happen. And the other thing, and this is especially relates to if you have multiple also technical teams working on one project, and this also speaks to how our technical team worked with also technical resources within the Lingual team, is just to make sure there are no code conflicts. So this really relates to also making sure that there's a defined process in place. You have one partner, in this case, we're making sure that we're managing the code merges. There's a regression testing as well to make sure everything that's developed from another team, for example, is properly tested in terms of regression testing to make sure it's working on the reference application, it's working on the main application, right? So there's no conflicts. But again, these are really minor challenges at the end, because they have not held up with anything. But I want to point out this as well, because this is something we sometimes see as well, in other scenarios, and also with other partners sometimes, right? Something that's always good to address very early on as well, right? So it doesn't, blow up and become a real issue. And lastly, I would also like to point out really, you know, some of the, what I would say, key success factors for the project. Definitely, you know, that we had a detailed scope of work, so there's no room for interpretation or ambiguity, because that will save time later, right? There's a clear development pipeline, making sure that the teams are kept busy in an agile development, right? So there's no downtime, lag time, idle time, you know, that never helps. There's a clear data migration plan, already spoke to this. Cutover planning, obviously, if you're migrating from other sites into Salesforce Commerce Cloud, you want to minimize any site outage as well with a well-defined, you know, cutover plan. One great feature again from Salesforce is there's a very comprehensive site readiness assessment or SRA process as well. So Salesforce with their technical experts as well will basically give another third party, if you want, quality of assurance of quality for newly launched sites. So everything is reviewed as well. We typically, you know, go through that process. Every partner would go through that process as well. So this is really to have another set of eyes, or multiple set of eyes as well, to look at everything to make sure it's performing fully, you know, there's no security issues and anything. And, you know, overall, you know, summing up as well, obviously it's something that's very relevant, you know, working within, you know, a partnership is always to have transparent communication, right? To avoid any misunderstandings. So, and just to, you know, close this off, some of the, you know, sites that we've launched all together, just to give you a sneak peek here as well into some of the brands like Tanuki, a fashion brand, XLarge, you know, that's also a very famous, also fashion brand, Briefing for bags and accessories, Outcome, also, you know, fashion, Toot, which is, you know, underwear and swimwear, and Makuake, which is, you know, accessories as well and technical equipment. So with this, I'm going to close off here, stop my share, and we can go into the fireside chat.
Okay, thanks, Patrick, for sharing. Good morning, everyone. This is Shuri from Merkle Hong Kong. And today I'll be the moderator for this section, fireside chat section with Lingbo. So I understand that, Leandro, you have a lot of experience in cross-border business. Can you share what is the foundation of an effective and successful cross-border business?
Yeah, the foundation of it, I think there's probably two points that I would say that are very important. One is that you have to have a long-term vision for cross-border. I think that's one of the things. If you're short-sighted, you're going to end up making a lot of mistakes at the beginning. So I think from a strategy perspective, and I know that there's not an operational foundation for it, because everything kind of builds up on the strategy, is really for you to have a long-term view for your plans to go abroad and to expand cross-border, and make sure that from the very top of the organization you have buy-in for this, because otherwise you're not going to be able to do it. You really need that. There needs to be a strategic decision from the very top. I think the other thing that is very important as a foundation is that the what I like call the three major principles of successful e-commerce, which are pricing, selection, and availability, become even more important when it comes to cross-border. And just to like elaborate a little bit more on that, I mean, pricing is obviously making sure that your pricing is competitive enough, because you're going to be facing a totally different competition level when you start going abroad, and you need to have your pricing be really solid. Selection is really, I mean, that obviously depends on whether you're a retailer or a brand, but in both cases, you have to make sure that the selection is the adequate selection for the different countries that you're actually trying to sell into. And availability is more in general, it encompasses a lot more, and that encompasses not only the way that people can find the products in your website and in your environment, the payment methods to make things a lot like readily available, the shipping as well, fast shipping, all of that encompasses the availability piece. So I think you really need to focus a lot more on those three principles in order to set a solid foundation to go abroad and to be successful with cross-border. That's what I would say.
Yeah, so there are three principles that's very important for a cross-border business. So my next question will be, what are the top challenges of starting and operating a cross-border business? And do you have any tips on how do we overcome them?
Yeah, I think the top challenge, and this is obviously like a very big one, and it entails a lot of different minor challenges, but the really big challenge with this is, and we kind of alluded to this in the presentation overall, is really the orchestration of different pieces that come into play when you start going into cross-border, because there's many things in domestic that are very simple, but once you start going outside, the little pieces that are moving independently start becoming multiple, not only from like the different channels that you have to start managing in cross-border e-commerce, whether you're selling on a marketplace or you're selling just on a site or you're selling on social, right? So you're managing multiple pieces there. You're managing logistics that crosses borders with different logistics partners that can ship to different locations. You're managing returns. You're managing data in a different way. You're managing like your regulatory side. So I think that the effective and like orchestration of all of these pieces is really the most difficult thing to do when you're going cross-border, and why sometimes doing it with a partner actually makes it easier. But I would say that, you know, if you decide, okay, well, we don't want to go with a partner, we think we can handle all of this on our own, which is fine. You know, some companies go in that direction. I think the important thing to I guess my advice would be to, one, be ready to make mistakes. I mean, and learn from them quickly. It's okay to make them. You will make them, and you'll be tripping over certain things as you go. You just have to be sure that you're actually like changing the way you do things very quickly and learning. I think you have to be ready for it being expensive. And that's also okay. It's better to start on the right foot and do things right in cross-border from the get-go, to not develop a poor reputation early on. And that might entail something that is more expensive than what you expect. But I think you can work later on in reducing the cost of doing it. And then I would say, obviously, just don't assume that things are the same in the outside markets as they are in your domestic market. I think we see that mistake being done by so many companies we talk to, and it's something that we really have to hammer, because people come with very, very strong assumptions. I mean, there's people that have done e-commerce domestically for many years, and when you're basically essentially telling them that that's not the way it's done, you're going to have a little bit of a, you know, of pushback. But I think you really have to understand and be humble about it, that you actually don't know how things are done. So that's what I would say that are important things to overcome that problem.
Yeah, so I believe keep learning, improving is very important in this process. My next question will be to Vipul. What are the factors should we consider into when choosing the right cross-border e-commerce platform?
A good question. I think the things that you know, any brand should look for when they are looking you know, for a platform. And I'll just go a step back, and I'll kind of, you know, reconfirm what Alejandro told previously. They have to make sure that they are in it for a long term. It's not something that they are just planning to do, you know, and expecting results immediately. Second thing, from the solution side, I think it's important how they are going to manage. They should know, are they planning to have one single IT team or multiple IT teams? And based on that, the architecture of the solution is very important. It should be, you know, multi-site architecture. That is one very important point, because you will be launching a lot of sites, right? And at the same time, it should be very easy to be localized, specific to the you know, local country's needs. Again, as Alejandro you know, previously mentioned, every market is very different. The consumer expectations, the consumer preferences are very different in each market. What works in you know, Singapore might not work in Malaysia, which is just few hundred kilometers away, right? So it's that different. So, a solution which can easily be changed. And most importantly, I think, a solution which gives you the ability to make a lot of changes, customize as per your need. But when it comes to running your daily operations, it should be easy enough that your business can own and manage it. You don't have to depend on IT a lot to make those changes. I think that would be the ideal platform for anyone looking to go cross-border.
Right. Okay. So to summarize, having a multi-site architecture will be important and should be easy to localize, and the flexibility and easy to use will be very important when we consider a good platform. And my next question would be to Alejandro. And I would like to know, why did you or your customer decide to use SFCC as a cross-border e-commerce platform? And what were the advantages of collaborating with a Salesforce partner like Merkle?
Yeah, I think this is so. Just I think for the benefit of listeners, Lingual is a connectivity platform where essentially we do connect to other e-commerce service providers, including solutions that are platforms like Salesforce Commerce Cloud. But for us, we in our full service solution, which includes the running of the setup and the running of the websites for our clients, we wanted to have a really solid partner that we thought was the best one at really doing those things that we needed, especially what Vipul was actually mentioning just now. Is the flexibility of the platform to localize with the right structure. And what I mean by the right structure as well is that in our view and our preference, especially for the size of companies that we deal with, which, they're not the enterprise size level. Most of the time you get it's medium to large size companies, and some of them are smaller. The right structure for us was to be able to have the localization experience in subfolders structured in the site, to be able to really kind of manage everything as a one website structure, not only from a data perspective, but from an SEO perspective, marketing perspective. It's just a much better way to go. And with Commerce Cloud, we found that they had the best ability to really kind of localize things like the pricing catalogs, which were very important to just be able to show the right pricing for the right products in the right location. That allowed us to be able to do delivery duties paid very easily with our partners and our clients, right? And then also the merchandising catalog. You start seeing a lot of distribution channel, especially the traditional distribution channel conflict that arises with expansion to cross-border online. And in order to manage that distribution conflict, you normally want to be able to determine what your merchandising catalog will be like in a particular country. And that was also a very important piece of the localization that we needed to do. And at the same time, obviously, like the languages and the currency support, all that stuff that was available in Commerce Cloud was really important to us. That combined with stability was really the choice for us, the right choice for us. And we, even though we had worked with several different e-commerce platforms before, we were also very well aware, and this is, I think, where the humbleness part comes in, that we were not very familiar with Salesforce Commerce Cloud in order to actually set this up in the way that we wanted to set it up. And that's where really like the choice of Merkle came in. I mean, they are I think the best provider of services in this area. And they were able to do something that is generally pretty challenging, because we're essentially running a multi-tenant setup over our e-commerce platform, which is really more of a data management microservices platform that pushes data in and out of like the Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and it directs it to essentially different sites. And that was something that we were able to do with Merkle, and we thought we didn't want to take a risk. These things are too important to do, and you really have to work with the right partners. That's something that I think is also important for people to know. And that's a principle that we have. We don't go out there and try to do what's been done very well by others. And that's where we rely on partners like Salesforce Commerce Cloud and Merkle. Is better to really just focus on the stuff that where you can innovate or where you have expertise.
So from Salesforce partner perspective, this question is for Patrick. So what are the top challenges of setting up and implementing an e-commerce platform from scratch, and how should we tackle them?
Yeah. It's a good question, and I try to keep this brief enough because there's certainly a lot of considerations around this. I would say this, right? Probably if we talk about from scratch, which is really from the beginning, this is really the most difficult part, to just get started. Because it relates not just to the whole technical setup, and we've talked about this also quite at length, and Alejandro has also pointed out some of the things that were quite relevant in choosing the right commerce platform, etc. But it relates to so much more for any kind of organization. It relates to the organization itself, the processes, right? So sometimes change management is part of this. It also relates to the overall view. If we talk about commerce, and we talk a lot about brand-driven commerce here, B2C commerce, but at the end, if you look at it from a company perspective, of course, commerce is really a collective term as well across all channels, whether that's the brick and mortar retail, whether that's also other marketplaces, social commerce, and whatnot. The ecosystem nowadays is so wide, and if you dive deeper into this ecosystem, then you see there's just so much that a merchant can do. And for most services as well, if you look at a lot of the services as well that basically turbocharge the commerce experience for customers, for example, on the user experience and others, there are so many competing services as well. I think everyone who is in this ecosystem knows there's never just one service provider for one service. There's always a lot of competing services. So that just to gain this overview is already a challenge to start with. Something that helps a little bit, of course, if you look at specifically Salesforce, is that Salesforce itself has already built a very extensive ecosystem that addresses really all the aspects of a customer journey. So if you look at Commerce Cloud, and then in combination with a lot of the other Salesforce clouds and systems and integration engine, that already helps a lot to piece this together, right? But something that we as a partner, as a Salesforce partner, typically do as well, really in order not to overwhelm our clients for this initial step, is to really always start with the roadmap exercise. And this is really valuable for most brands and clients as well, to really look at, okay, we have these things in mind, and we know that our competitors are doing this and the market is doing this, but what is actually what we should do over the next, typically about 1 to 3 years. And this is typically a good time frame to look at both kind of the more quick wins, what to do initially, but then also looking a little bit further beyond that, just to make sure as well, whatever, is set in motion right now is also something that, 2-3 years down the line is not going to be like a, one-way street, a cul-de-sac, right? Where suddenly you see, oh, I kind of, boxed myself in, and, now I have to do something completely new. You never want to get into a situation, right? So we look at, as a first step, most immediate features that are needed, and that's typically kind of an MVP, right? So it includes something like basic platform features, most important integration, something like what we mentioned, payment, fraud management, basic social integrations with maybe a single sign-on, most relevant integration with business systems, ERP, OMS, something like inventory updates, etc. These are all most relevant. And for this, by the way, we've also built, something of a quick start solution that can help really to implement all this in a matter of weeks instead of months. And after that, we would look at, then the most immediate, additional features that add additional value to increase efficiency, for example, improving customer experience, and that can be the full integration, for example, with all the business systems. We mentioned already ERP, OMS, warehouse management system, product information management system, digital asset management, etc. So this really depends on company to company, right? But we're going into this whole unified commerce concept as well, where the customer is in the middle, and all the other channels and touch points really circle around that. And then, also to go into more learning personalization tools, right? Using AI and machine learning tools, etc., marketing automation, etc. And then, with all that, keeping an eye on the roadmap, knowing what we want to do now, but also, giving a little bit of flexibility, of course, because once we go further down the road, things might change. We might have a black swan event like COVID, right? And I think Vipul mentioned this as well. No one, 3 years ago, no one was looking at curbside pickup, right? And suddenly 1.5 years ago, everyone was looking at it because, you couldn't really go into the stores anymore, right? So these things sometimes can just pop up out of nowhere. And and this is something you also need to be prepared for, right? And maybe with this, I just quickly want to address as well. I know there was one question that was raised here by one attendee on the question is, if clients go to digital transformation with global e-commerce as a project in the long term, what is the most important thing that clients focus on while they collaborate with you all? And I think this is also around that, right? Really looking at the roadmap, having a vision as well, a North Star if you want, where you want to go, and then, executing that vision as well and having a clear idea where you want to go, right? I think this is really, really relevant.
Right. Let me ask the last questions. So this is for 3 of the panelists. And I guess a lot of participants will want to know, what are the emerging trends in e-commerce?
Alejandro, you want to start?
Sure. I can start on that one. There's a few that come to mind. I think one is really kind of like the disruption of the traditional wholesale model. I think relationships with retailers are getting redesigned, and a lot of like the direct to consumer space is developing really quickly. The omni-channel idea is also taking a very different sort of aspect right now. It's just morphing into something very different. As Patrick was mentioning, e-commerce is not just about one thing, and now more than ever, the trend is to really try to incorporate as many channels. Is really about selling where people are buying and not sort of dragging people into your shop, whether that's just a brick and mortar shop or like your online shop, is really sort of being there for consumers. So there's a lot of trends around that. I think the other thing that I think is very important. Well, two additional things that I'm going to quickly touch upon. One was mentioned by Vipul, so I'm not going to like spend too much time on it, but it's really the making the online experience as close as possible to the real shopping experience that people used to have inside of a shop, but online. And that entails having like AR, VR involved, having a much more connection with the salespeople on the ground, with like through customer care. That's why live chat becomes so important as well. And that also ties into my other point, where I do see a lot of trends. It's on the live shopping that we're seeing. It's obviously something that's trending right now in Asia. According to a report that I was reading last night, it's 50% of people in Asia have already shopped in live streaming e-commerce, and that's huge. I think there's a lot of like gamification as well, and what's called like shoppertainment in the industry evolving, where you're really sort of trying to gamify the experience. And this is because of competition. You want to make it more lively, and you also have this shoppertainment to really engage and have people be closer to the shopping experience than they were before. So I would say that these are trends that you're seeing, but these are very kind of like still very new trends, because you can talk about other more general trends, but those I think are exciting to kind of be on the lookout for. Maybe I don't know if Vipul wants to go, because I think everybody will have thoughts.
Let me go first, maybe. And I agree with Alejandro. I think the trends that I've seen, I would probably put it in two folds. One is a gradual shift in the region from predominantly relying more on the marketplaces to kind of going direct to consumer and understanding the importance of that consumer data. So it doesn't mean that marketplaces are not going to be important. They are very important. But now brands, irrespective of the size, big, very big, small, medium, they're all understanding how important it is to go direct to consumer. have that consumer data, the behavior, the information, the trends, and quickly adapt to it. The second point would be more around what customers do really look for when they are looking at a new solution. I think Alejandro very beautifully mentioned providing that experience on the digital channel, which is as near to the physical channel, as if you are in a physical store. That same experience, as much as possible, is something that almost every customer is asking. Apart from this, the other things that I've heard a lot would be around using the AI to kind of learn the shopper's behavior. This is, I think, by default, the norm. Everyone wants that. And not just the, one point on the personalization is around the experience, but the second fold of personalization is also around the catalog that you show. Customers prefer that show me the relevant product only. I don't want to go through thousands of products. Show me meaningful things so that I can make a purchase immediately. I think that is the trend. Lastly, brands want to have that sticky relationship with the consumer. And I think subscriptions seems to be the thought of the, here. Everyone wants to launch subscription and have that recurring income coming in.
Thanks, Vipul. And let me just keep this super brief. I know we're 5 minutes over time. I think part of, what I think it really reflects what Alejandro and Vipul already mentioned. 3 broad topics see, and I'm not going to talk too much about, again, what I mentioned before, unified commerce, omni-channel channel commerce, because this has really become table stakes already, right? So something that customers already expect, but personalization, AI, machine learning, my other attendees here have already mentioned this. Definitely, the ability to understand customers better while also being conscious, obviously, of, data privacy rules, GDPR, and all these things, being able as well to really piece together a good customer profile to understand the ability to understand, customers better, which again, you can only really do through brand-driven commerce. And, and you also have to, again, balance this with something like something that a lot of you, if you're in that ecosystem, are aware of, the death of the third-party cookie, right? So being able to just, gain customer data from a first-party source or, zero party data is even more important, more important than it ever was, right? So there's no way around it. And then thirdly, of course, if you look at data more broadly, data is power, right? Data is the new oil. We all know this. But then being able really to collect all the relevant data from all the touch points, right? And something that has become very popular as well and very commonplace is to have a CDP or data lake to really collect all that unstructured data. So that's one part of it, but then also being able to actually use that data, because that's the flip side of the coin, right? Sometimes you have too much data, but then being able to structure the data and make it useful to actually influence business decisions, right? Using some a BI tool, business intelligence tool, visualization tool like Tableau or others, is really key to that as well, because otherwise you don't want to have, a bunch of data and you don't really know what to do with it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. There are a lot of emerging trends, I believe. And so let's leave some time for Q&A. For participants, feel free to add your questions in the Q&A box. And right now, we actually received 2 questions. So the first questions, I think this is more for Alejandro. And how do we manage the logistic costs while doing cross-border shipments?
Yeah, that's like the $1 million question right there. I struggle with that all the time. I mean, we do. It's actually it's not easy. And cross-border shipping, I think this goes back to my point about more like keeping a very long-term strategy for cross-border e-commerce and really for your global expansion in general online. I think you have to accept at the beginning that your margins are going to be tight. You're doing this very kind of like purposefully and strategically, and that's okay. And that's how it's going to essentially start for you, because there's no way of just suddenly being able to reduce the cost of cross-border shipping, especially with today's customers' expectations. I mean, they want stuff quickly, so it's not like you can suddenly like ship a product, via boat, right? It's not gonna work. This is the era where people want within the same week the product, regardless of where it comes from. So I do think that it's more about you getting comfortable with living with lesser margins while you develop your e-commerce. And then what you do is essentially start localizing, depending on what the data is showing and where you're doing well, and using some like demand prediction models, start localizing some of that inventory on the ground in warehouses, where you can essentially improve the cost of the last mile delivery is going to be but much quicker. So you improve the customer experience, but you also improve costs because you're actually being able to minimize the shipping costs, and you can plan ahead. And that's really the second step, right? So, but first you're going to have to deal with that, see where you're getting a lot of demand, and then plan for inventory on the ground to essentially reduce those shipping costs. That would be my advice on that front.
Sure. Okay. So we also have another question. I think this is more for Vipul or Patrick. Another participant will want to know, how should we integrate from SFMC, so Salesforce Marketing Cloud, to Commerce Cloud? So we can start with Vipul.
I think good question. So what we have seen historically is, almost 30 to 40% of the customers who are using Commerce Cloud are also using Marketing Cloud. Which is a common theme, because I think, they kind of go hand in hand. There are readily connectors available for Marketing and Commerce Cloud, which kind of enables a lot of, journeys that you can create. For example, the abandoned cart journey could be seamlessly created. Things like, retargeting to customers who have already made a purchase. All these are kind of out of the box available for customers to use. Obviously, if I talk about the benefits, then the more improvement on the ROI behind the campaigns that you run, because now you're getting the actual data, and based on that data, you're running your campaigns and stuff. So yeah, I mean, quite powerful story. Patrick, would love to hear something from you if you want to add.
Yeah, just to double down on what you said, Vipul, right? I mean, both are absolutely crucial. Just think about it, right? You can't have just a commerce side without any marketing automation tool, because you want to make sure you can follow up with customers, you can address abandoned carts, you can, for example, provide promotions for, at birth dates, of your customers and all these kind of things, right? So you need a marketing automation tool, but obviously, you also can't have a marketing automation tool without the commerce side, right? Because you need somewhere to transact as well. So really both go hand in hand, go together. And at the end, the key to that is really to set up the right journeys, right? Again, marketing, Marketing Cloud is so powerful because you have, Social Studio, you have, the journey builder and all of this, which just, basically there's no end to how creative you can be to set up, journeys. There's some journeys that must be in place that everyone is expecting as well as a customer, but then especially if you have some loyalty programs as well, some membership programs, right, that probably add some specific journeys as well. And then you have the different channels as well. You have obviously email, you have SMS, you have rich text message, you have social media messages, etc. So working with all of this as well, in a good manner, and then define the right segmentation as well based on attributes and also behaviors is really key to the power of Salesforce Marketing Cloud.
So I guess we are 10 minutes over in. So that's the end of this webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, I will send you my email after this section. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Cheers.